Yeah, look, six guy, he a visionary. I'm the definition like the dictionary.
With the first pick in the 2023 NBA Draft, the San Antonio Spurs select Victor Wembanyama from Nanterre, France.
Victor Wembanyama sharing this moment with his family. Every phone in this arena is out, capturing this historical moment.
Alrighty, guys, welcome back to Q's Hot Takes. And on today's show, I got my guy C Ruff, host of the Timeout Sports Podcast, which is now on 105.1 FM on Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. Ruff, how you doing today, brother?
Steve, man, I'm doing pretty good. Just one day at a time.
Yes, sir, man. So we got a lot to get into today. We're gonna start out with the verdict of Ja Morant's suspension. So Ja Morant, he was suspended 25 games after he was caught flashing a gun for the second time in 2 months. So Ruff, do you think that this suspension was enough? It's the longest suspension in the NBA that didn't involve drugs or fighting. So what are your thoughts on Ja Morant's suspension?
So I went back about a month ago. I was talking with my mom, and I had predicted 25 games. I thought that was the number that he would get. Then when Adam Silver came out and said, well, we found more information, it made me bump that. I'm thinking like, okay, it's some kind of information that they found in their findings that they're going to bump this. So I went from 25 to saying maybe 41. I could see half a season. But in the end, they did, like you said, they were stuck with 25 games. I guess that was a fair amount in their opinion. And I have no issue with it, really. I mean, he went from 8 games to 25. So, and also he will not be eligible for season awards. So I think that's enough time to allow him to try to learn from his action. And Ja Morant is a special basketball player, and I think he's a good guy at the end of the day. But, when you're young, sometimes you make bad decisions. Sometimes you hang around people that don't mean you well. And so I'm just hoping that in this time that Ja is able to go back to the drawing board and understand that what God has blessed him with is something that 99.9% of the world can only dream of. And I posted about 2 weeks ago, I think, that, he's got to remember to honor the gift. That's a clothing brand by Russell Westbrook. And it's real. Honoring the gift means that, I understand how fortunate I am to be where I am, to be one of the best basketball players in the world, and make wise decisions as a result. So, like I said, I think the 25 games is fair. I hope that Ja takes his time to do whatever he needs to do to get his mental right, and I hope that when he comes back, we're able to see him have a 10 to 15 year career from this point on and be successful.
Yes, indeed. That was well said, bro. Like you said, when the commissioner said that they had gathered additional information, I thought that it was going to be 30 or more games. But they went with the 25 games, and like you said, that was a good increase. It was first 8 games for the first flashing of the gun after the Denver Nuggets game. He went to a strip club in Denver and was flashing the gun. So for the second offense, I feel like 25 games was good. Like you said, hopefully he learns from it. I'm hoping he gets some type of counseling for whatever he's dealing with, because I think he's dealing with something. For him to keep making these mistakes over and over again, and I really hope he evaluates his circle, because I think some of the people he's hanging around with, they're not really that good for him. Like Devontae Pack, it seems like whenever Ja's around him, he usually makes some wrong decisions. So, like you said, hopefully he takes his 25 games to really evaluate his life and make some changes so he can have a long and successful career. Next, we're going to talk about, we had a bunch of trades that went down before the NBA draft. The first one really surprised me. It was the Wizards sending Bradley Beal to Phoenix Suns. The Wizards got Chris Paul, Landry Shamet, multiple second-round picks. They're going to have multiple pick swaps. And then Phoenix got Bradley Beal, Jordan Goodwin, and Isaiah Todd. So Ruff, what are your thoughts on this trade? Were you surprised that Phoenix was the team that landed Bradley Beal? What were your thoughts on this first trade?
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised by it. I mean, I remember, I think the night before it happened, seeing tweets about them being entered into the sweepstakes, that they were interested. Um, I just don't think that's the best fit. I think you have teams like Miami who really had a need for him when you talk about having Jimmy Butler, who is not a substitute star, excuse me, a star in my opinion. I think, can play like a superstar at times, but I think it's a star. He's a good offensive player and a good defensive player. You have Bam, who is a great defensive player. Offense needs a little bit of work, but I think if you would have added Bradley Beal into that mix, now you have a guy that's able to be the first scoring option, and you have those other two pieces who can do other things and still give you 20 points. So I would have liked that pairing better. I think maybe even Boston. Maybe you do Jaylen Brown for Bradley Beal. Jason Tatum, Bradley Beal. I think they're friends. They get to pair up. I don't agree with the Phoenix fit because now you have Devin Booker and Bradley Beal who do a lot of the same things.
Exactly.
Neither one of them are really that big. I think they're about 6'4" and 6'5". So, and now you're going to have Devin Booker playing the point, which he's capable of facilitating, but I do not believe he's a point guard. He's not a point guard. I think that you need an actual floor general out there playing with them. And so now I'm just confused about what they're going to do. Are you still going to try to get a point guard, true playmaker, and have him at the one, have maybe Bill at the 2, Booker at the 3, KD at the 4, and Ayton at the 5? Are you still going to try to do that? Or are you going to actually try to have Booker play the point and then go with Bill at the 2? It's going to be interesting. I mean, they have firepower, of course. You have now 3 guys who can get you 30 on any given night. But I think that what basketball has shown me as a fan for basically 20 years, it's not all about scoring and all about firepower. Sometimes it's about sacrifice. It's about fit. And it's about having those guys that's willing to do the dirty work. And so now I think Phoenix is going to have to look for 5 or 6 guys that is one willing to take a major pay cut. I mean, they don't have money to give anybody. So
At all.
they were making a joke on Twitter that they're going to give out $17.50 an hour for their employees. And so I just think you're going to have to figure out, you're going to have to, like I said, you're going to have to get about 5 or 6 guys that's willing to take major pay cuts probably from what they could ultimately get somewhere else. And they're also going to have to be guys that play defense, play and do dirty work. I mean, I think you just need straight 3-and-D guys, some playmakers. They mentioned that Stanley Johnson is going to have a workout with him. I like that pickup for them if they get him because he's not going to be in there trying to score, but he will lock up. So it's going to be interesting. I don't think that this move puts them at the top like some have said. For one, you still have an injury-prone Kevin Durant, who was great, but he's injury-prone. Bradley Beal has had some injuries. So I need to see more from Phoenix to ultimately get my prediction on what they'll be. But I think that they were a better fit for Bradley Beal in the end. And it's actually his birthday today, 30. So happy birthday, I guess.
Yes, happy birthday, Bradley Bill. So from my understanding, are you saying the Suns are gonna have to shop from the bargaining bin to get their bench players?
Well, see, you never know. Some players might be okay with taking a major pay cut. It depends on what you prioritize. But I think the guys that they're going to really need, yeah, most of them are going to be, because they can't afford to get a whole lot of guys 33, 34, 30, Kevin Love and people like that. He might take a pay cut because he's, already made a lot of money and he's at the later part of his career. But the guys that I think could really help them and make moves, yeah, they're going to be in their mid-20s. And so I think it's going to be tough for them to get those guys that can play defense and be dirty work guys that also is willing to take $2-3 million. I don't know. They're going to have to show me. Now, one name to look out for Phoenix is Harry Giles.
My God.
Harry Giles is back in the gym. He looks healthy, still young, and I don't think he has enough uh, behind him right now to try to go somewhere and demand high money. So I think he would be willing to go in there and prove it, on a 1-year deal with Phoenix for the low, and be able to be a mobile bid for them. So that's one name I'm looking at for Phoenix potentially.
So do you think they would have been better off keeping Chris Paul and having him be that facilitator? Do you think that would have been better for him, or it wouldn't have
Well,
worked?
now they don't have more money for all that unless you was gonna try to figure out how to get Chris Paul to come back and take a major pay cut. And our fellow Ram, I think he likes all his money.
Well, yeah. At first, they were trying to shop DeAndre Ayton and Landry Shamet, but that wasn't moving the needle, and that's why they had to pull Ayton out of there and put Chris Paul in there, and the Wizards accepted. So, yeah, I guess the money they would have just been in luxury tax. They would have been drowning in luxury tax. Like you said, this really didn't make sense to me. Because although the Suns have three guys who on a given night may score 90 plus, they didn't address why they lost in 6 games to the Denver Nuggets. Their bench, they don't have a bench still. And now, like you said, it's going to be even harder because you got three guys who are eating up the majority of your cap. So you're going to have to get some like vet minimum type of guys who don't want a lot of money. It's going to be very tough. And also, they still don't have anybody on their roster who can guard Djokovic. DeAndre Ayton, we know he's hot and cold. His motor some nights is hot, and other nights he's just you don't even know he's out there. And I think that's why they were shopping him so much last week, trying to get somebody to take him. And then when nobody wanted him, they was like, "Well, I guess we got to keep you now." Um, like you said, I'm intrigued. All three of their superstars, like you said, have health issues. All of them seem like they're always hurt. Bradley Beal, he's been dealing with injuries the last 2 seasons. KD, it unfortunately seems like he's always getting nicked. And Devin Booker, his hamstring is liable to go out at any moment, unfortunately. So it's a lot of question marks around this trade. Like you said, I feel like Miami would have been better for Bradley Beal because it seemed like they've been attached to each other for the last couple off seasons. I had Vonnie on last week, and he was saying that was one of the guys that he wanted the Heat to get because in the finals that's something y'all struggle with scoring, and Bradley Beal, he's a bucket, so. I think Miami would have been a better situation for Bradley Beal. Our next trade, this one was probably even crazier. The Celtics they traded for Kristaps Porzingis. Uh, Marcus Smart is now on the Grizzlies. Um, and the Wizards they received Tyus Jones, Gallinari, Mike Muscala, and a second round pick. And then the Celtics, they received a first round pick this year, and next year their first round pick is top 4 protected from the Golden State Warriors, which means if it lands in the top 4, the Warriors get to keep it. If not, then the Celtics will get the pick. So, Ruff, um, I think the Celtics got a little weaker here by trading away their best backcourt defender, Marcus Smart. Um, what are your thoughts on this trade right here?
It's hard to really say. I'm not surprised they moved Smart. I just think that in the end, he's shown some weaknesses in the playoffs. I don't think he's a true point. But now you have an issue because Malcolm Brogdon appears to have something really wrong with his arm or hanging.
Yes,
So you have an issue there because it's like, okay, if you're going to get rid of Smart, who's played some point for you, you can't afford for Brogdon to be hurt.
exactly.
So it's a tough one for me. I think if you can somehow figure out how to get Bruce Brown to replace him, they don't play the exact same, of course, but Bruce Brown can defend. He can give you some scoring punch. He does it all. He rebounds. Uh, so I'm looking at Boston to see whether the moves they're able to make. I think that Porzingis is a good pickup for them because I think he's a consistent scorer, consistent shooter. Now, Al Horford had games where he was great. Then he had games where he literally built houses, and I mean mansions. So it's like I think Kristaps will be more consistent with him, and this is the greatest talent that he's ever played with. Assuming that they keep Jaylen Brown, they'll have Jason on one end, Jaylen on the other side, and Kristaps, near the middle. So I'd like to move for Boston. I think I'm still interested in seeing what else they do though. And I personally would move Jaylen Brown. I would try to move Jaylen Brown. I would see if I could get a guy like OG Anunoby and maybe okay. I got a trade that I would try if I'm Boston. OG Anunoby and Gary Trent Jr. For Jaylen Brown.
Would the Raptors take that? That's intriguing.
I don't know, but I think so. It's a bona fide store, and I think that for Boston that would give you two positions. Because Gary Trent Jr. is a good shooter, and he's a capable defender. So I just don't love the Jaylen Brown fit, especially because he seems like he just doesn't get in the lab in the off season. He continues to come back with that same shaky handle, and I just think that limits their potential. Because at the end of the day, you can't be a small forward in the NBA and have a terrible handle. It's just going to make it very tough for you. So it's going to be interesting. I was not shocked by the trade by any means. Them getting rid of Smart. And I think Smart with the Grizzlies will be able to kind of replace Dylan Brooks, give them some of the things that he gave them. And he's even a more consistent three-point shooter. So I like to pick up for Memphis.
Yeah, yes, and I think he'll provide a good leadership for that young Grizzlies team, Marcus Smart. Like you said, Porzingis, he'll be a more consistent, and he's a younger Al Horford. He can replace Al Horford in that role because Al Horford is getting up there in age. I don't know how much longer he's going to be playing. He's 37, 38, I think. So, yeah, he won't be playing much longer. So you get younger at that position. He's like you said, Porzingis is more consistent from the 3-point line. He averaged 23 points this year. Um, but like you said, Boston's going to have to decide. They're going to want to max out Jaylen Brown and then have him and Jason Tatum pretty much eating up their whole cap. And then they'll kind of be in like the Phoenix situation where um, they're going to be pretty strapped to the cap and it's going to be hard for them to add pieces. Brogdon, that is a concerning situation because that's who Boston was originally trying to trade in this, three team deal. But then the thing came out about his arm and him being, seriously hurt and stuff like that. So that is very alarming. Memphis, they did, lose their backup point guard, Tyus Jones, who's been very consistent, off the bench. He was a big piece for them. And I guess the Wizards, it looks like they're just gonna go in a total rebuild mode, and they'll probably be in the top 5 next year. Um, as we saw, they added Jordan Poole. So let's go ahead and talk about that one. The Warriors traded Jordan Poole for Chris Paul, which is crazy to me. Chris Paul maybe has 1 to 2 more years, and Jordan Poole, I'm not saying he could carry a franchise, but he could be a piece, once Curry, Clay, and Draymond retires that they could lean on to, make sure they don't, completely fall off the map. Um, and I'm just really not sure, are the Warriors planning to start Chris Paul or are they gonna have him in like a Kyle Lowry role, which I think would be good when he comes off the bench, gets the bench guys some easy looks, runs the offense for him off the bench. My only concern is would Chris Paul be okay with coming off the bench, or are they going to try to have it where Curry is like a Rip Hamilton, Ray Allen, where he can just run around and you know, he don't have to worry about running the show. He can just run around, get good looks. Chris Paul can set them up. Um, so, Ruff, what were your thoughts when the Warriors traded Jordan Poole for Chris Paul?
Yeah, I wasn't the least bit shocked that they traded Jordan Poole. I thought the writing on the wall once you had the Draymond situation. That team
Mm-hmm.
just was never right after that punch fight, whatever you want to call it. I think if they sided with Draymond, and I'm not surprised, ultimately they feel like he's the piece that they need to continue to compete. I don't know that I agree, but hey, so like I said, I wasn't surprised that they made the trade to trade Jordan Poole, but for what they traded for, it didn't make sense to me. I'm not trading Poole, who's in his early 20s, for Chris Paul, who, like you said, is 38 years old, I believe. It's nearing the end.
Yes.
It just doesn't make sense for me. It's not a fit. They're going to try to make it work. But if you start him, you have a 5'11" guy. He's listed at 6 feet, but I don't think he's 6 feet. I met him, took a picture with him, everything. I don't believe he's 6 feet. Um, Even if you give him 6 feet, you have a 6 foot guy and a 6'3" guy playing your one and the two.
Mm-mm.
That's let me tell you something. Most teams are trotting out 6'2", 6'3", and 6'5". So you have a major disadvantage there. And the thing is about it, if you're going to start him with Clay defense not being what it used to be, you're going to need Draymond and Andrew Wiggins to play the best defense they've ever played. Because they're going to literally have to carry you on defense. Because we know that Steph is a, I guess you could say decent, but he's definitely no specialist. Chris Paul's defense is not what it used to be. And Klay Thompson's defense is not what it used to be. So, like I said, if we're going to start those people, Steph and Chris at the one and the two, Draymond and Andrew Wiggins are going to have to be all worldly defensive for that team for them to be able to stay afloat. So I just didn't like it. I think that there were better options for Chris Paul. Shoot, I think that Boston could have been an option. You go over there and you play with Jaylen Brown, potentially Jason Tatum, Chris Stop. Um, it was just Clippers. Back to the Clippers could have been an option. So I'm not a fan of that move. But hey, we'll see.
Yeah, because like when it broke that Chris Paul was going to the Warriors, they were not a team I was expecting him to go to at all. It just didn't make any sense. Like you said, Boston, because their problem has been turnovers, so Chris Paul could have really cut down on that. The Clippers, because Kawhi and Paul George, they're going to miss their game, so having somebody who could, be there. I guess Chris Paul probably would have maybe replaced Westbrook. Maybe I doubt they would have brought Westbrook back if they had landed Chris Paul. So yeah, like you said, it was better options out there for Chris Paul. I knew Jordan Poole. It seemed like uh, it was he was gonna get traded this offseason, but I just wasn't expecting it to be for Chris Paul. That one just didn't make much sense to me at all. And he'll be a part of a rebuild in Washington. And he'll most likely get the start, and we'll see if he can have a better year than he did last year, especially in the playoffs. He has some very disappointing no-show type of games, so we'll have to see. Um, and our last trade, which broke Monday, I remember I got on Twitter and I saw somebody was posting John Collins highlights and were saying they hope Utah takes care of him. So I started, looking up Chris Haynes, and then I went to Woj, and then I saw that the Hawks traded John Collins for Rudy Gay. So Ruff, um, I know before we got on air, you said you weren't surprised. So what are your thoughts on this trade?
No, man, I've seen that writing on the wall for 2 years. They've been the Atlanta fan base especially have been calling for him to be traded. Um, I just think they weren't really using him, utilizing his skill set. Um, and so I'm not surprised, and I'm actually happy for John Collins to get an opportunity to play elsewhere. I got a chance to see Collins play in college when he was at Wake Forest
Mhm.
against Duke, and I just think that he still has a lot to give, a lot to offer, but he needs to be in another situation that has ran its course. Um, Now. Utah didn't expect that to be the landing spot.
Exactly.
Um, but when you look at it, I mean, that's a very solid three man there at the forward slash center position because you have Walker Kessler and Laurie, who I assume will still start. I don't know if John is going to start or not because Laurie's not a five. John is not really a five unless you're playing small ball. Could they potentially start all three? Because
Maybe.
Laurie, I think, can play the three. Yeah, that could happen. So I think I just think there's another team right there for him is a good fit. And see if you put him with Laurie, who was a floor stretcher, I think that allows him to have his talents showcase more. And I think John Collins is a decent 3-point shooter. Last year was not a good year for him, but I think he'll come back to the mean this year and get into the mid 30s at least. Um, so I'm looking forward to seeing what they're able to do in Utah. You know, Utah was a team that was expected to be terrible last year, and they were a lot better than we all expected. They were very competitive. So you know, I'm interested in seeing what they do. Colin Sexton is the name that they're mentioning could be traded. So I'm interested in seeing if he's moved from on from if so, and where he would land if he is.
For sure. So when the ESPN article broke this trade, they had Collins, Marketing, and Walker Kessler starting together. They had Collins at the three, Lowry at the four, and then Walker Kessler at the five. So they're expecting all three to start. Um, they're saying they think that's going to be the projected lineup. What do you think this does for the Hawks? From my understanding, I think they did this trade for cap flexibility. From my understanding.
Yeah, I don't see it meaning much to them. I just don't. I still don't like the Dejounte Murray and Trey Young backcourt. I just don't. I mean, Trey Young is a guy that's an overhyped shooter. They used to compare him to Steph Curry, and he's absolutely nowhere near the shooter that Steph Curry is, not even in the same ballpark. Just
Mm-mm.
because you can make one or two deep threes, does not mean you're in the ballpark of Steph Curry. He's just not. He's a mid 30% shooter. Um, and DeJounte Murray is not really a 3-point shooter. So I just don't like the fit. Both of them need the ball in their hands to really succeed and excel. Um, you still have question marks. What are you going to do with Clint Capella, who is not what he used to be? Uh, a lot of fans want them to get rid of Hunter. What do you do with DeAndre Hunter? Uh, so I don't think it moves the needle at all for Atlanta. I still think that they're an okay team next year, but I don't think they're a contender at all.
Yeah, so they could be another team who could potentially, if they don't get what they need, they could, be in the rebuild to try to get a high draft pick maybe. Because, like you said, they have a lot of question marks on this team after moving John Collins. So we'll have to see how the Hawks handle all these pieces that they're shopping out there. So to close out, we're gonna talk about the NBA draft. Uh, so, Ruff, let's first talk about our number one pick, Victor Wembanyama. Do you think he's going to live up to the hype in San Antonio?
You know what, man? It's always hard to predict these things. From everything I've seen, he looks special. He really does. I mean, he has the size, he has the skill. Um, from the handle at that height, from the shooting ability, getting to the rim, finishing. Um, he looks special. He really does. And I think San Antonio is a good fit because you get to be under the tutelage of guys like Tim Duncan, David Robinson. I think both of them will potentially get in the lab with him and try to make him an even tougher player. You know, now he's very skilled, but Tim Duncan can show him some things about toughness and David Robinson. So
For sure.
having those two guys that you can potentially get in the lab with and work on your game and pick their brains, it's amazing for him. And also being able to play for a guy like Greg Popovich, who I thought would have retired by now, but he's still hanging on. Um, one of the best basketball minds that we've had. Um, I'm intrigued, man. I really am intrigued by what we see from Victor. Um, I think that the sky's the limit if he stays healthy because he does have that skill set.
For sure. Like you said, he's 7'5", has a nice handle. He can step out and hit the three. He's a good rim protector. He can drive. I mean, he has it all. And the Spurs, they've had two number one draft picks in their franchise history. You mentioned both of them, David Robertson and Tim Duncan. David Robertson in 1989, and then a couple years later, they drafted Tim Duncan, number one. Both of them produced multiple championships for the Spurs. They're top 75 players all time. MVP for David Robertson. So, like you said, I hope that I feel like that they'll be good role models for Victor. I saw he went out to dinner with them, Mono. I think this is gonna be a good fit for him. I think it's gonna be a couple years before the Spurs are back to being the San Antonio when Tim Duncan was there. But I'm intrigued to see what Victor can do for the Spurs because it's not often you can get a 7'5" center who can do it all. He reminds me of a Giannis, 7'5" Giannis. I think that's a good comp for him if we're talking about current NBA players. Do you have a do you have another one that he reminds you of based off the highlights you've seen?
I don't see Giannis. I think he's a better Porzingis. Because
Porzingis? Okay.
because of that height. I mean, that length, uh, the ability to shoot a three. So Giannis can't really shoot. Giannis plays more like a freight train. Porzingis and Victor play with more grace. And so I think Porzingis is the better comp. Of course, he's better or potentially could be better, but I think that's the comp that I see.
I got you. Yeah, because like you said, Giannis, you really want to pack the paint, and make him shoot. You really don't want him to get ahead of steam because that could be trouble if he gets ahead of steam. Um, so who are some teams you thought had some good drafts?
But I tell you, who comes to mind? I didn't like the draft was my Miami Heat.
Oh
Um,
God,
but good drafts. I like what Charlotte did. I like what Charlotte did. Who else I like? Cleveland.
oh yeah, getting Bates.
I
Yeah,
like I like what Cleveland did. Yeah, I think Bates is going to be potentially sneaky. I think that as long as he can stay with his head on a swivel, and stay with his eyes on the prize, I think that he's going to have a very solid career in the NBA. Yeah, those are two that stick out to me. Who would you say?
well, I put down Brooklyn. I feel like they got some good young pieces. Drafting Clowney, they got Whitehead out of Duke, who if he can stay healthy, he's gonna be special. And then they got Jalen Wilson, in the second round, who was the Big 12 Player of the Year. I was surprised he was still around at 51, but getting him, he's gonna provide high energy. He's a small forward who can really attack the rim. So I think they got some good young pieces. I like the Pelicans getting Jordan Hawkins from UConn, who's just a sniper. Um, I'll be intrigued if they try to start him with Zion, Brandon Ingram, and CJ McCollum. If they do, I think he could, really space the floor because he's such a knockdown shooter. He really reminds you of Richard Hamilton and Ray Allen, the way he can come off screens and just let that thing go. And you mentioned the Hornets. I was shocked to see that their fans were booing Brandon Miller. Like, I'm like, do y'all watch basketball? Do y'all know who Brandon Miller is? I know the Hornets haven't had the best success in the draft, but this kid can score and he can fill it up. I know they wanted Scoot, but I feel like the Hornets needed a small forward because you can't count on Gordon Hayward. His glory days are behind him. He's his injuries have taken a toll on him. So you get a younger forward who can really score at an elite level. Uh, they got Nick Smith Jr., who, if it wasn't for that knee injury, he probably would have been in the top 10, because he missed majority of the season in Arkansas. And then you got um, Bailey from UCLA. He's a two-way player. We really didn't get to see, him, really showcase all he had at UCLA. But he's an electric scorer. So the Hornets, they got some good scoring, and then they got Najee, the 18-year-old, who he's gonna be like a project. Um, Maybe one day him and Mark Williams can be their front court. So um, I think the Hornets. Uh, I don't know if they'll be playoff good. We have to see how all this fits. Can Melo stay healthy? Because I Claire, every time I look up, Melo is hurt with something. So can he stay healthy? If he does, I think they could potentially, sneak into that play-in tournament. I know Brandon Miller thinks that they're going to be in the NBA Finals next year. I wouldn't go that far. Uh, I would love today that the Hornets make the finals, but I don't think it's going to happen this year. But yeah, those were some teams who I thought had good drafts. Why didn't you like your Heat's pick? I think he fits the Heat culture. He's a ball player, bro.
Yeah, I think that I'm not saying that he can't play. I'm not saying that he could potentially do certain things, but I think we had greater needs.
Yeah.
Uh, I think that there were players available who I would have rather have taken. Um, so but like you said, it's not a pick that surprises me. It seems like a Heat pick.
It
Uh,
does.
when you go through that history. And so hopefully he makes it, out to be wrong. Not even to be wrong, because like I said, I'm not saying he won't do anything for us, but I think that there's other places that I would have went. Um, but I'm more concerned with what the Heat do in the off season, because there's a lot of moves that need to be made. You cannot come back next year with that same roster if you want to be successful. It was really fairy tale if you got to the finals.
Yeah, being an 8 seed and making it that far, I mean, that you don't see that often at all. In fact, this is only the second time it's happened. So but you probably need to replace them shooters who was building some houses in the finals, as you like to say. So we'll have to see what your boys do. Ruff, I want to thank you for coming on, brother. It's been a minute since we did a show together. Why don't you tell everybody where they can follow your pages, and why don't you go ahead and promote that radio show, man?
Yeah, so for the radio show, I'm on a break right now, with it being no NBA, no NFL. Looking to probably get back into it sometime late July. But if you want to keep up with me, you can find me on Twitter at Timeout Sports 3. We do polls, we do, a whole lot of different content. Instagram is Timeout Sports with two underscores. And Facebook, we also have a Facebook page, Timeout Sports Podcast. You can, support in all of those ways. The podcast can be found on Spotify and iTunes and Time Out Sports Podcast. And also, if you're a fan of the WNBA and you love to see those ladies play, we post about them uh, on those pages, but we also do highlight their fashion and style. And so you want to see what they're wearing to the game, what they're maybe wearing to date night, or whatever the case may be. Follow WNBA League Fits on Instagram, and then Fits underscore WNBA on Twitter. I also have my own clothing brand called Millionaire in the Maker, and it's for all of the dreamers, all of the people that aspire to be wealthy someday. Um, you know, if millionaire status is where you want to be, then tap in, join the movement, and get you some merch. So you can contact me on those platforms, or either you can email me at CRUFF2310 at yahoo.com, and we'll figure out how to get you in some merch.
Yes, sir. I love it, man. I just want you to know I'm proud of you, man. You've been doing a lot of great things this year, and I want you to keep it up, man.
Yes, sir, Keith. I appreciate it, and same to you, man. Just understand it's a marathon, not a sprint. Every day we gotta strive, brick by brick.
Yes, sir. So that does it for this week's episode of Keith's Hot Takes. We'll be off next week with it being the 4th of July. I want everybody to be safe. If you go out to cookouts, parties, all that, be safe, and we'll be back the following week after the 4th of July. So I'll see you guys then. Peace.